So, you think you're untouchable?
Word life. This is basic thugonomics. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me. Word life. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me.
Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and a happy week 1 of June to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there. We at the Bayou Blitz, we love you so much, we decided to give you 2 treats. Number 1 is a special Friday night edition of your Bayou Blitz. And number 2, we have a special guest, the one and only Super Bowl champion, Courtney Roby, joins us tonight. Courtney, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How y'all doing, fellas?
We're good. We're good. Summer, I think, is finally here.
It's still up and down here, out in Indy. One day it's cold, next day it's 80, 90 degrees. So right now it's rainy outside. So hopefully it can make up his mind here soon.
Brendan, tonight, how are you?
Good. Charlotte's finally getting a little bit of a heat wave, which is nice. Right, starting to get some of that summer weather. But we have a projected 10 consecutive days in the forecast with rain. So it is truly that summertime where you're going to be getting those nice storms within the city. But hey, man, I'll take it. It's nice outside. We get the Savannah Bananas in town this weekend too, so it should be a fun time here in Charlotte for a little bit.
All right.
Oh, I got my 35th class reunion. No old man jokes, Brendan. I'm not in the mood. Not in the mood.
35.
I know it. I know. Courtney, you aren't that far behind me, are you?
No, I'm not too far. I'm not too far. But you know what? I got to get it out when I can. So
I just celebrated 10, Bob. So I'll throw that out there.
Shut up, Brendan. So listen, Courtney, I know you got about 30 minutes or so with us, but a ton to get through. Right. Let's start with Get Checked or Check Out and the Go Black and Gold celebrity charity fan cruise. Mm-hmm. I've only talked to you a little bit since we got off. How did you and your family enjoy the trip?
It's always a good time. We see a lot of the same people. They come back year after year. And I mean, it's just a good time to just enjoy the ship, the vacations, the good weather, the food. And just celebrate. Get checked or check out. So great cause, great organization. So I mean, it's always a plus.
Yeah, for sure. And, we are so appreciative of what you do, what the whole organization does. Not only setting up this cruise, but everything that they do. We at the Bayou Blitz, we're one of the promoters for Get Checked or Check Out. And folks, June is Cataract Awareness Month. We talk about maintaining your physical health, going to the doctor, checking, getting following through on your appointments. Last month we talked about Mental Health Awareness Month, but a lot of people forget about eyesight. I say that as my bifocals sit across the room and I'm squinting and reading stuff at the screen. So call me a hypocrite if you must do as I say, not as I do, as I tell my kids. But folks, make sure you keep up on your eye care. Cataract is not just an older person affliction. While that's most common, it can be accelerated by if it's in your family. It could be accelerated if you're a smoker, if you're a drinker, any of that stuff. So please, not just June, which is going to be Cataract Awareness Month, but just make sure your eyesight is one of the things that you constantly keep up on. Make sure your family members and especially your kids go to see the eye doctor on a regular basis.
Courtney, let me ask you this. We know that there are some really competitive parts of the cruise. Unfortunately, I didn't get to get on the cruise this year, hoping to be there next year with you guys. But you got the Buckeye tournament, you got the Beach Olympics. How competitive is Bob actually? I hear stories, but how competitive is Bob actually?
Bob is competitive. I don't know the stories of what you hear, but I know when we played putt-putt, he, just like I, was definitely upset because, you know, there were teams that were ahead of us that should not have been. And
Kelvin.
exactly. Exactly. And so, I forewarned, Bob before then,
You did.
yeah, they do a lot of padding of the stats. And he definitely was a witness to that this year. So next year we got a plan in place, or we'll have to get a plan in place, I should say, so that we make sure that we're up there too. Because I mean, heck, everybody else was doing it. So
Yeah, we do, Courtney. And I thought, first of all, I want to apologize to you again. You had kind of an anchor on your team. I'm not a great golfer, and you had the little man who I thought actually putted pretty well.
he did for
But
sure.
it wasn't until you and I were tallying up the scores after the fact. Shireen asked me. I guess I have an honest face. Shireen asked me to tally up all the scores, and we're adding everything up, and we're like, wait a minute. Courtney Roby's team has an extra person.
Yep.
So there was no way in hell we had a chance to win. I'm going this whole year in protest, and Will is practicing. He has a little putt set in his room, and he's putting around. So we get the same group together next year. We're winning this thing, my friend.
We'll get it. Listen, I'm all here for it, man. So I won it one year. So we got to win it next year for sure.
Let's talk about the current state of the Saints a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of compare it to your time in New Orleans. Obviously, this is kind of an adjustment period for the Saints. I don't know if you want to call it a full rebuild or a retool. Some people don't like the rebuild word. But look, new head coach, new quarterback, really what looks to be a completely new identity for the Saints. Looking back when you were with New Orleans and just in the league in general, did you have a full season where you felt some similarities? And what were some of the most important things during training camp to help build that new identity?
Yeah, so actually my first 2 years, I would say, when I was with Tennessee, because my rookie year, we had one veteran wide receiver, and all the rest of us were rookies. So we basically, got thrown in the fire early. We had to learn, the pro game, extremely quick. And that time we had Steve McNair, rest in peace, Steve. But we had Steve McNair at quarterback, so he obviously is a Hall of Fame, caliber player. Surrounded by a lot of rookie wide receivers because they actually drafted three of us that year. And so like I said, like we kind of had to learn the speed of the game, all the the nuances of being a professional. So so I would say that year, and then my second year, that's when Steve had left, and I think he joined Baltimore, and then they drafted Vince Young. So he's a rookie coming in. We're in our second year of playing, and it's kind of, again, like we're kind of learning on the fly a little bit. Obviously the receivers had a year up under our belts, but I mean, it's still a lot to learn. So I think this team is kind of in that same nature. Because I mean, you really have an unproven quarterback room, so you have to really be patient, You know, I know that that's hard as fans, and you know, you want to see your team succeed, but you know, a lot of times you got to understand, like there's a lot of things that go on this pro game that you don't really um, come into contact with until you're actually out there playing. And so, you know, like I said, you know, it's obviously an unproven, you know, quarterback room, but you know, I think once they get everything together, it'll be cool. And
Now,
I think Kellen will put him in position to be successful too. So he's great at that.
you actually brought up a couple great points I'd like to expand on. You know, you talked about, you know, in Tennessee, you know, you came in, Steve McNair was already there, and then you had already been there when Vince Young had come in, and then of course you come to New Orleans and Drew Brees had already been established with the Saints there.
Right.
Talk to us about what a receiver and quarterback have to do to get on that same page quickly. You know, does it happen naturally, or is it an absolute necessity that they have to put in extra work other than the OTAs and training camp?
Definitely got to put in more work. Definitely have to be in position to where, you know, you're on the same page. You know, it's almost like, you know what, you know what he's thinking as a quarterback before, um, you know, or during the play or whatever the case may be, you know, whether it be, you know, a slight nod, you know, but I mean, all that comes with repetition. You know, I remember when Vince was, like I said, his rookie year, actually, this was the second year. We all as receivers went down to Houston, which is where, you know, he was located, you know, his house or whatnot, you know, during the off season. And we spent a week down there with him, you know, just running through routes, you know, running through different scenarios and just doing different things so that, you know, when it came time for camp and stuff like that, we have, you know, kind of a feel for each other and just being ahead of the game. So, you know, that's definitely something that's not naturally given. You know, you got to work at it. And, you know, a lot of times that's why, you know, receivers and quarterbacks, you know, those that are, you know, at our practices, you know, during camps and stuff like that, you know, who are staying after practice and stuff like that. So, um, you know, you'll see a lot of the quarterbacks and receivers out there, you know, getting extra reps and, you know, just doing stuff like that. 'Cause, I mean, that's important, man. You know, the reps are just as important as the video study. So.
Is it actually helpful in this case? You mentioned Kellen coming in, and of course, Kellen Moore is an offensive guy. Yeah, so this is going to be his system, his baby. So, but is it actually helpful that all the guys are basically learning from the same starting line? You know, none of them have been in this system before. You know, even the guys that were on the team, you know, Shahid Olave, the last couple of years. You got a new system, new terminology, new philosophy. So is that actually helpful for Tyler Shuck, of course, the rookie quarterback, you know, to not come in and feel as overwhelmed as maybe other guys would?
Yeah, definitely for the rookies for sure, because you know they're starting from ground zero. So you know they're learning the terminology, you know, from jump and just being in the, you know, the system, you know, the only system that they know at the pro level. Now guys who, you know, like, you know, Alvin and, you know, Shahid and, you know, Lavo, you know, a lot of them, you know, they've been you know, in different systems, you know, in the past. So it may be a little bit tougher for them. You know, the thing about it is that um, you know, a lot of the route concepts are the same. You know, like they would say all the time. I mean, it's definitely a copycat league, but the terminology is different. So one play may be the same as another play, but it's called differently from, you know, the different coordinators and whatnot. So it's just a little bit different. So yeah.
Let me ask you this: a guy like Brandon Cooks coming back to New Orleans has some familiarity with Kellen Moore. How much of a role and how important of a role does a guy like that have, who would be considered essentially the lone veteran on a team that has familiarity with a system like
Anytime that you can have, you know, a veteran on the team that's already been in the system is definitely a plus. Because now you're able to have somebody, in house that's able to kind of teach and kind of guide guys, towards, what the offensive coordinator or the head coach may be thinking and stuff like that. So, anytime that you're able to have somebody that's already been in the system and is familiar with it, it just kind of speeds up the process or learning process, I should say, because again, you got guys that, are in the locker room that kind of, you can lean on. So
Courtney, we talk about Rashid Shaheed, and I see a lot of comparisons or a lot of similarities. Excuse me.
excuse me, guys.
Between.
Excuse me. Come here. Come here. No, no, come here. Come here. Since she wants to crash my session, come on.
Hi guys.
Well, hello, young lady. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We are good. We are good down here.
Good. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to crash.
Yeah, you did. Goodbye.
Crash anytime you want.
Thank you. Take care.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. She's family as much as you are.
I appreciate it.
But I was starting to say I see some similarities between Rashid Shaheed and yourself. Obviously, both wide receivers, both terrific return men. Now the difference between you were bigger, stronger because you were a hell of a gunner too. But Rashid's coming off an injury that sidelined him from the midway point of last year. You yourself had an injury. Now yours was a neck injury. His is knee injury. So I'm sure there's a different mentality there. But is it more difficult to overcome the mental part of the injury when it comes to special teams or on offense?
I think any position, especially when you play, a violent sport, such as football, because a lot of times, obviously if you have surgery, now I didn't have surgery because mine was, definitely, head and neck, but with him, coming off surgery and whatnot, you have that mental block of wondering, if it'll hold up, what I'm saying? And, if you make one small move, will it, give again or, whatever the case may be. So, a lot of times, obviously, that you've been through the rehab and you've been through the different things to prepare you to getting back on the field. But, you know, again, it's just that mental side. It's probably the most important thing, and just knowing that everything is solid. So
Let me ask you a little bit more of a fun question.
okay.
So going back to your days in Tennessee,
Mhm.
you play with a Hall of Famer in Steve McNair.
Mhm.
You play with an all-time college great in Vince Young. Then you go to Drew, and then you have a little bit of time with Matty Ice, in Atlanta as well. So you have quite the resume of playing with Hall of Fame caliber guys. What made each one of those guys special, and what was one thing that you learned from each of those guys individually?
Okay. I got to add one in there too, Peyton Manning. So I was with the Colts actually before.
Yes,
before
sir.
the Saints. So got to put him in there. So, I've been blessed, to play with a lot of great quarterbacks, man. And when you sit there and you think about it, reading out those names, and you just think about it, and it's like, wow, you don't really hear that a lot. I can't really say anything bad about any of them, quite honestly. But in my mind, Drew is probably the most solid out of all of them, and the reason why I say that is because, like, he is probably the most down to earth quarterback that I've ever played with. And you can joke around with him, can ask him serious questions, can ask him crazy questions, whatever the case may be, and he just cool, man, just real cool. And I didn't hold him going to Purdue against him, even though I went to IU. But I will say this though, I unfortunately I had to wear a lot of Purdue gear in my years of being
Losing
his
bets.
teammate. Oh my gosh, it was bad. It was bad. But I did get him one year though, so But yeah, nah, he's just down to earth, man. Just real down to earth. You know, yeah, yeah. So all great quarterbacks, all Hall of Famers. In my mind, Drew is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So just great guys to be around for sure.
My turn for a fun question, but it's a two-parter.
Okay.
Courtney, you're track and field guy. All state in the state of Indiana. For those that don't know, so part one of my question is: all things being equal, equal money, equal opportunity, et cetera, would you choose a career if doing it all over again? Would you choose a career in track and field or football? And the second part of my question is: favorite event in track and field?
All right. So the first answer, no, football is my love. I mean, it was always my love from day one. Honestly, I just ran track to help me on the football field. And the crazy part about it is my dad forced me to run track in high school, and I didn't want to do it. I fought him tooth and nail. I was, mad, upset, the whole 9 yards. And I'll never forget, it was my sophomore year, and he forced me to do it. And I was like, all right. But then I started liking it because, I started to see the difference of not only, the speed difference, but also carrying that over to the football field. And so, it allowed me to, kind of play the game at a faster pace, at a different level than, those who weren't as fast or as quick. Um, the crazy thing about it is, so we're getting our basement remodeled, and I was kind of going through some of my college stuff, and I found my because I ran track in college too. I found my medal, my Big Ten medal, and I thought I had lost it. So yeah, because that one was for the 4x1. So I anchored the 4x1. Also, I ran the 100, and I got fourth in the Big Ten that year as well. So I missed the
Wow.
medal in one place, um, but yeah, no. So I wouldn't trade the sports again. I was gifted at both. I was blessed with speed, but again, football is my love. Now, the second part of the question, for me, the 100 meter is, I mean, that's the cream of the crop. So that was always my favorite event to run. Um, yeah, that's the one that everybody stands up for. And I would say, secondly, I would say the 4x1. And then third, although I didn't run this one, I would have to give the third place to 4x4. So those are my top three.
I'll anchor in the 4x100 relay just as much stress as just as much stress as just about any sport you could put out there.
Yes. It very stressful. You hope that the other three guys kind of build up a lead, and you just got to kind of maintain. But then it could get close, and it's like, what, you gotta make up some ground. You know what I'm saying? So it's very stressful. Very stressful, but I mean, it's fun though. It's fun, kind of push your body in, and the stressful situations. It's kind of see what you're made of. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Let's talk about your time in New Orleans, being a team captain a couple times. If you could put yourself on this Saints team, what is the one thing you would make sure to do as a team captain with all of the youth we talked about earlier?
So one thing that made our team special, and we talked about this actually during the cruise, but like we hung out together, all the time. Families hung out together, off the field. So it's like, we built that bond, and so those things don't just come naturally either. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to work at that, because you figure you got a bunch of guys that are from different walks of life, and although you may have the same common goal, um, you gotta understand the person that you're going out there and playing with. You know what I'm saying? So, if you have a group of guys that are actually, feeling as though, all right, well, you know what, I'm stepping out here, with my brother. You know what I'm saying? And we're going out here, we got the same common goal. That just makes sure that you, like, you go out there and you want to do whatever you can to make sure that you don't put him in position to, either A, get hurt, or put the team in position to not be successful. So you kind of go the extra mile for each other, when you have that special bond. So that's what I would say that this team really needs to do, especially with being young. Just do, different activities. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be going out to dinner, that's one of the things that us receivers did every Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like, we went out to dinner as a group. We brought the wives with us. Kids stayed at home, but we brought the wives with us. The coach was with us, his wife, and we just had a good time, man. So you gotta build that bond with each other. So that's what I would say.
Courtney, you had a lot of great moments as a football player. Certainly with the Indiana Hoosiers, and then Tennessee Titans and Indianapolis Colts. But obviously, we're a New Orleans Saints-based podcast, so I want to center my question on this.
Sure.
The one, and I'm sure there's tons of them, but the one moment as a New Orleans Saint that you are proudest of as accomplishing as a player.
Oh, definitely Super Bowl. And the reason why I say that is because, that year, we kind of came into the season as the underdog. And the reason I say that is because, folks didn't really know what we had as a team. And then, as we continued to win, and, we put, a string together of, what was it, 13 wins in a row or something like that before the first
Yes.
loss, or 10 wins in a row, something like that. But that's kind of when we showed, all right, well, you know what, it's for real. And it's a lot of games that we were down and we had to find a way to win. One of the first, or actually one of the most tired games that I've ever been a part of was when we went down and played the Dolphins in Miami. It was extremely hot. And I'm saying that, knowing that we're coming from New Orleans, but it was just a different type of heat. And, we had to find a way to win. It was a battle. Another game that comes to mind is when we played Washington. Back then, they were the Redskins. So, we were down, and, if you can remember, Meacham, stripping that ball and, taking it to the opposite direction, for a touchdown. So, it just kind of reminds me of how these Pacers are doing right now. Just finding ways to win, man. So
they're a fun team to watch, I'll tell you.
They are. But again, as long as you got guys, you can tell, like, they're on the same page, man. So again, that's what we had special in New Orleans. So to me, that Super Bowl moment was definitely the most enjoyable and the closest to my heart forever, for sure.
Well, and you were part of a group that brought tears to a lot of Saints fans' eyes with the victory over the Vikings, just to make it there. You had a big play to help them win that one. Just an amazing run, kickoff return average, through that playoff run. So I mean, you were such an integral part of that championship team, and you'll always have our gratitude. I know that. I know I speak for all at Houdat Nation when I say that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Just know, again, even though I'm retired and I'm here in football country, I carry that Houdat Nation, membership proudly. All right. So actually, again, like I said, we're getting our basement remodeled. I think I said that earlier. And one of the workers here noticed my license plate. And I'm not gonna say what it says, but just know that it's linked to the Super Bowl. I'll put it that way. And so he asked me if I get a lot of flack, being that I live in Indianapolis, with that license plate. And I said, yeah, but I love it. So, again, I'm always part of the Who Dat Nation forever. And it means a lot for sure.
Oh, me, and Pierre living above the Mason-Dixon line. We are card-carrying members of the Northern NOLA Mafia.
Yeah,
Well,
that's my guy. Shout out to Pierre, man. That's my brother for sure.
I know you got to go, but I want to end on this question because we talked about this before we got on the air, and you just brought up the Pacers. So you were part of a New Orleans Saints team that brought a championship to the city for the first time. Your Pacers have an opportunity to bring a championship for the very first time. What is that feeling like as a player, knowing that you were such a huge part of something that changes a city forever? And how could or what could that mean for the city of Indianapolis if the Pacers were able to do it?
Yeah, it means much more because you know that you're playing for other purposes besides just, okay, you know what, I'm winning a championship. You know what I'm saying? Because you're actually, and I can only speak for how we were, when we won the Super Bowl, but like you're out there playing for the fans, and I know that sounds cliche, but I promise you it's not. You know what I'm saying? Like every time that we stepped out there, we fed off of, y'all's energy. We fed off the, knowing that the fans are counting on us. And we held that in high regard. So I'm sure the Pacers are doing the same, and I feel like, it would definitely be special for the city, given the fact that, again, like you said, we haven't had a championship here. But it just makes it that much more sweeter. And, the fact that they're underdogs too. I think we talked about this, before the show started. I mean, they're underdogs, just coming in, with the mindset of, just going out there and playing, people counting you out. We know that feeling as well. Even though we had the same record as the Colts. I mean, everybody expected the Colts just to walk over us, and it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So I mean, it just is what it is. As long as you go out there and play, which they are, and they proved that yesterday. They'll be successful. So it's pretty dope.
Courtney, thank you so much for taking
Thank
some
you,
time
brothers.
with us tonight. Get our love to you. Give our love to your family, and let's try to hook up again soon.
For sure. Let me know. I'm always here. So
For sure.
Thank
Thank you.
brother. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
Good people, Courtney Roby. Great people. Love spending some time with them. And his wonderful wife and two lovely daughters. We had a blast together. It's just a small portion of what you can experience on this cruise, guys. The original Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise. Courtney's been a part of it for a few years now. I've said it several times. It felt like, these people, I'd met all of you in person for the first time. Had already had social media connections, and Courtney had been on the show a couple times. That has had Delvin, Tyrone, Pierre, Mike, but just to hang out. In person for a few days. It was one of the better, and I've been on a lot of trips in my life, but if it wasn't the best trip that I'd been on, it's right up there. So, folks, if you've never been, I strongly recommend you do so. If you have been, then you know already what I'm talking about. And once you go for the first time, my bet is you'll want to plan your yearly vacations around that trip.
I'm excited to get to go next year. Right, it is something we're going to make happen. We're going to do a live show probably as well, if the powers that be, aka the internet, allow us to.
Big question, yeah.
But it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Like you kind of alluded to. Like, we have built such wonderful relationships with so many former players over the years. And you finally got to meet some of those guys in person. I have yet to do that. you and I don't live in Louisiana. A lot of these guys don't live in Louisiana anymore either. We're just talking with Courtney, obviously, up in Indianapolis. So this is a golden opportunity for us and for fans and for a ton of people to meet some of these guys. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. Also, with
and it's not. It wasn't just the players either, and it wasn't just their families. It was the fans. Our fans, our friends. We call you family, week in and week out, and it certainly felt that way. Dee, Reham, Shireen, of course, the co-founder of Get Checked or Check Out. Kay, I could go on, Coco, I could go on and on and on. Because there wasn't a moment of that trip where we didn't feel right at home. And you're talking about a family, my family. None of us I've traveled all over this country, never stepped foot onto a cruise ship in my life. And we step on there, I won't lie, it was a bit of a fiasco when you get dropped off at the docks, by your Uber, and some dude just whisks along and just takes your bags, and said, "What room you in?" Didn't leave you a claim check or anything. You just told him what room you were in, and off your bags went. Okay. It was real anxious getting on. And Summer too. I forgot to mention her. Once we stepped foot on the ship and I started hooking up with you guys, our family members, then it was just all that anxiety melted away. And I mean, it was an absolute blast. So like I said, if you've never been on the cruise, please, I strongly recommend you go. Not to mention the Get Checked or Check Out cause and foundation. The money goes to them, and you can't ask for a better cause. And whether you can or can't go on to the Get Checked or Check Out website. They need our help. They need your help. Because the funding that they get, the money that they raise, it goes to research, medical research. It goes to is setting up resources for families that receive the worst diagnosis that you could possibly imagine. You receive it, you don't know where to turn next. Get Checked or Check Out is specifically there for that. They'll guide you to the resources that you need. They'll help you with what they can help out with. But in order to keep them going and in order for them to do that, they need your help. So please, if you have $1, if you have a couple dollars that you can spare, you can't beat the cause. Go to the Get Checked or Check Out website, and we at the Bayou Blitz are going to continue to promote it. And we will have the specific cruise dates for you for 2026 when they become available.
Absolutely. Going back to our conversation with Courtney, are there a lot of players, especially receivers in NFL history, that can say they played with 4 different Hall of Fame quarterbacks? It's kind of like, when you really sit there and you say it out loud. And, I mean, you can throw Vince in there and you can make it 5. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame, or if he's not,
right?
That's insane. I don't know if I can name anybody off the top of my head that comes close to playing with 4 or 5 different Hall of Fame quarterbacks. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and it's a shame. You get somebody like Courtney on, and we just we had such a blast talking to him. Hopefully you guys had such a blast listening to him. But you run out of time. And I'm not saying because he had 40 minutes to spend with us tonight. Could spend 3-4 hours talking to Courtney, and you wouldn't have enough time to talk to him about his thoughts on the current team, his thoughts on his retrospective look at his career, because I mean he was one of those guys that did all the little things that helps teams win. I talk about been watching the New Orleans Saints for a long, long time. And Brendan, we have had the pleasure of getting to know some terrific kick return guys. Courtney, Obviously, Michael Lewis, Tyrone Hughes are in the Hall of Fame. Pierre Thomas was a hell of a kick returner too. We've gotten to know all those guys, and Courtney was right up there with them. I'd be hard pressed to find another gunner that was better than Courtney Roby in New Orleans Saints history. And we know what an emphasis the current Saints team puts on special teams. Courtney was one of the ones that kind of helped bring that in. You go back and watch some of those 2009 highlights, and I know you get sucked into watching Drew Brees, watching the offense, watching Vilma on the defensive side. Watch the special teams. Watch some of the hits that Courtney lays out as a gunner. Not only that season, but that's the season that comes to mind. He was the Saints special teams MVP that year. But just throughout his time in New Orleans, he was a great kick returner. He was just as fearsome and intimidating at covering kicks as well. And it's kind of a shame. He was a hell of a receiver for Indiana with the Indiana Hoosiers. Had a 1,000-yard season, another 800+ year. Drafted 3rd overall. So that tells you he was a pretty good receiver. He gets to New Orleans. He walks into a receiver room with Marcus Colston, Lance Moore, Devery Henderson, and Robert Meacham. There just weren't enough balls to go around. But Courtney, nonetheless, buckled up his chin strap and did what the coaches asked him to do, and did it so greatly. That Super Bowl ring was well earned.
Absolutely. You said gunners. Of course, your head goes to JT Gray.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing that separates Courtney from that as well is while JT Gray is outstanding in his own right and a Pro Bowler, at that, JT's not returning kicks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? JT's not in the receiver room and running routes in those games as well. JT, while he does get some safety snaps here and there, very specifically, this is your job. I mean, Courtney was kind of one of those guys that did a little bit of everything. You don't want to say the jack of all saints. We know who has that title, right? But he did do a little bit of everything for those Saints teams, not just in 09 like you referenced, but a handful of years he was in New Orleans. We won't talk about that one year in Atlanta too much.
Yeah. And he might not have caught a lot of passes as a Saint, but if you're on a team with Drew Brees, whether you're the number 1 receiver or whether you're the number 4 or 5 receiver, if you're on a team with Drew Brees, you know your stuff and you're a good receiver. Otherwise, he's not going to want you in that room. So it's a shame we didn't get to see more of Courtney Roby as an NFL receiver. But like I said, terrific return man, even better special teams gunner. You don't get to be a special teams captain and voted by your peers, teammates, as the special teams MVP if you're any slouch. So he was a hell of a contributor.
Absolutely. I do want to touch on some of his thoughts on this current iteration of the New Orleans Saints. I thought it was very interesting to hear his thoughts in terms of the youth and one of the most important things that this team could do. Just spending time together. Sounds very cliche. Sounds like, well, no, duh. You want to get to know your teammates and this, that, and the other. But I think if there's even more emphasis on it because it's a new coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just a new quarterback, but a young quarterback. So for the guys like Alvin Kamara, the guys like Cameron Jordan, the guys like Demario Davis, those guys to step up and make sure that family locker room atmosphere returns to New Orleans. And I think it's a very underrated thing, Bob. I might be throwing you some ideas for articles here. But I think it's a really underrated thing that during those Saints years from, I guess, 17 through, we can say 22, right? At that period, they were considered one of the closest locker rooms, one of the best locker rooms in the league. So not just falling off, but like skydiving down and more rumors coming out about maybe some cancerous sides of the locker room. So how important is it going to be for DeMario, Cam, and Alvin to really rally this team and make sure that this team does spend time together and try to get some of that locker room chemistry back? Because, like I said, during those peak years, they were one of the best locker rooms in football.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's absolutely critical, and I'd throw Tyrann Mathieu in that mix too. I know Honey Badger wasn't with the team during the years you're talking about, 16, 17, 18, 19 specifically, but he's still one of this team's leaders,
Absolutely.
physical and emotional. And it's easy to say, the coaches, especially as incoming coaches, the coaches should get together and promote these team activities. And I know Sean Payton very famously did when he got there in 2006. But for it to happen organically, naturally, the leaders in the locker room have to be the ones to do it too. And speaking as both a player and a coach myself, it is different when it's coming from a teammate, or when you, as a teammate, are introducing these ideas. Hey guys, let's hang out at my house, or let's all hang out at so and so's house. Let's go to this park or that park, or this restaurant or that restaurant. It's important for the coaches. The coaches can come up with these team activities to promote it. But again, the camaraderie, it has to happen naturally, and it has to happen organically. And for that to be the case, the leaders on that team have to be the ones to spark it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when it comes from a head coach, it's kind of like being in school again, and your teacher tells you have to do something. And you're like, I don't really want to do that.
Right. Or do this project with this group. Yeah, right. I mean, that's okay. Great. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. But whether it does or doesn't depends on the group and the people working.
Exactly. Exactly right. Exactly right. And what's funny about things like that is the coach could say it, and there's one way to feel about it, but your teammate could say the same exact thing, and you have a completely different response because it's your teammate opposed to your boss, essentially, or some, something to that effect. So, yeah, I think it is going to be vital for this team to find success at all. I think a lot of it goes back to patching up what was a very broken lock. I mean, we don't have to sugarcoat it. This is our show. We can say what we want. Towards the end of last year, that was a disaster. And I could use some very fruitful language to describe what that locker room was at the end. But you guys know what it was. We know what it was. And frankly, this isn't a surprise to it wasn't a surprise to anybody because it had been that way for the last few years. And I don't remember what year, Bob, and maybe your memory's better than mine, which would be scary considering, the age.
Careful.
But there was one year in particular, and I don't remember, maybe it was 23, 20. Yeah, maybe it was 23. I don't think it was 24. But Alvin Kamara gets interviewed towards the end of that year. And Alvin's a quiet guy as is. But it looked like more than just I'm done.
Yeah.
With this year. It just looked like it felt funeral-like from a leader of your team, and you're like, whoa, that's not good. And then it had to be 23 because you go into 24.
It was.
This is not good at all. Going into 2024, so that's a problem. You don't want that out of your team leaders. Now, obviously, winning fixes everything, right? Winning's the medicine, winning's the cure to everything. But man, this team has got to get back to being what they once were, and they can't be the same because locker rooms are different, players and personalities are different. but you got to find some form of belief almost at this point. And hopefully everything that they put into play this offseason is kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, you certainly hope that it is, because I tell you, I noticed everything that you were talking about from the team perspective, from the team aspect. I noticed it back in 2022, and I know this sounds like I'm going to throw Dennis Allen under the bus because that was his first year as the head coach.
Do it, Bob.
But
do it.
but that was also when when it really I covered a couple games that season and the following. Was in the locker room a couple times. Now, like you pointed out, they were losses, so you don't expect your team, your guys, to be jumping around and joking around, after a loss, especially when you lose a couple in a row. That brings any competitor down. But it felt like, I'm not going to say a cancer, but it felt like a fracture for sure. I would go almost as far to say that some of them even seemed disinterested. And that is the ultimate shot that you could take at any competitor, is that you're disinterested, because that implies that you're not emotionally there. You're not physically there, like something is missing. But that's exactly how I would describe the Saints going all the way back to 2022, is that something was missing. We talk about the injuries, and that certainly had an effect all 3 of the last 3 years on the field. But even setting that aside, the Saints have dealt with injuries in the past and still turned in some pretty good years, or were still pretty darn competitive. To me, this just felt like, again, I'm going back to 2022 specifically, 2022, 2023, and certainly last year. This team no longer believed that they could win. They no longer believed that they were consistently the better team on the field. And going back to what Courtney Roby said a little bit ago, that was what set that 2009, not only 2009, but especially that year, but 2010, 2011, that's what set those teams apart. Is they didn't really care what the outsiders believed, that the outsiders were giving them no chance. They believed internally that they had what it took to overcome adversity, that every man in that locker room, on that field, on that coaching staff had what it took to boost each other and do what it takes to win. And I never got that sense from this team the last 3 or 4 years.
Accurate. Extremely accurate. It'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting. I mean, obviously, we're so early into the off season. You can make all the assumptions you want. You can throw pasta at the wall and see what sticks. But right now, we're so early in that we won't really know until training camp. We won't really know until some of those first preseason games. When we really get a lot of media coverage with particular folks. I'm also going to be really interested to see. Obviously, we're hearing a lot of things out of camp on, how Tyler Shuck is looking, how Spencer Rattler is looking, and it does sound like it's a little bit more of a competition than maybe a lot of us thought it was going to be. With both those guys looking really sharp, I want to see how sharp they are as leaders in a locker room. And
Exactly.
I think that's what's going to really separate this competition. I still think it's Tyler Shuck's job to lose. I think that's the assumption to make. But who's going to step up and be a leader? I think that's going to play a big role in how this team views both of them through training camp and through the preseason. And that's going to be a fun conversation to talk about throughout the remainder of the offseason.
Yeah, it will be. And yeah, I know a lot of people are excited that Spencer Rattler went 7 for 8 or Tyler Shuck went 7 for 8, and each had 2 or 3 scores in the red zone. Obviously, I'm rooting for both to do well. I'm rooting for it to be a tough competition where both play well, and someone has to literally earn that job. But I'm not going to get too excited about the numbers or this guy looked better than that guy on this day until we get into the preseason games, and the proverbial bullets start flying for real. You're facing guys in different color helmets and different color jerseys, and you're having to make those split decisions on a fly while getting hit. None of those things are happening right now. So that's why I'm not going to, just like I wouldn't get overly concerned if, one of these guys went 1 for 8 with 3 picks, during an OTA session. I'm just going to shrug the shoulder. Okay, that's a bad day. Hopefully he doesn't have too many of them. Or okay, that's a good day. Hopefully he has more of those. Because you're facing the same color jerseys, as our friend on Under the Dome likes to put, Alan Ulrich likes to put it. This is considered install right now. These guys are basically learning the skeleton game plans, and the base plays that Kellen Moore wants to run on offense, that Brandon Staley wants to run on defense. So it's all terminology, repetition, and muscle memory right now.
Before we close out the show, Bob, I saw you grab some stuff from behind you, so I'm curious what that is. But I do want to address one thing. It is June. It is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So for all of you guys, all you men watching, Bob and I talk about this a lot. We talked about it a little bit last month as well. For whatever reason, there's this stigma around men that you can't talk about your feelings. You're supposed to bottle everything in, keep it inside, be a man, right? How many times have we heard that in our lives? Be a man about it, grow up, whatever the case may be. Your feelings are valid, right? Your feelings are valid. You are heard. Please speak your mind. Tell your friends how you're feeling. And with that, Bob, before we close, I just want to ask you, how are you?
Brennan, you took me off guard with that one. I appreciate you asking. Like I said at the beginning of the show, going into my 35th high school reunion, seeing faces that I haven't seen in 35 years, most of them. Yeah. So kind of anxious for that. I want to compare. I want to see how well or poorly I've aged compared to the rest of my classmate peers. So I will report back on that in that category for better or for worse. On next week's show. Remind me to do it. But I will give you an honest report on my evaluation. I'll even have Lauren write down, if she doesn't want to come on the air, I'll have her write down her evaluation on how I physically aged compared to the rest of my peers.
Perfect.
But yeah, I mean, I other than that, I'm doing good. You'll laugh. Due to the wife's urging, I signed up for an outdoor volleyball league.
Love it.
I know it's not doubles, which was, of course, my game. So I have no idea. I hope it's fours, because in my opinion, outdoor volleyball should not be allowed to be played competitively with any more than 4 on a side. But I'm trying to go in with the mentality. I'm like, it's a rec league. The wife just wants to see me play, even though I'm a shadow of my former self. The boy wants to see me play, even though I'm a shadow of my former self. So yeah, that will start up on weekday evenings, either Monday or Tuesday evenings in 2 weeks. I probably won't need to verbally report on that. You will be able to see by the look on my face and my movements on camera how that's going.
Yeah. So we can live stream it, right?
Yes.
We can live stream the games. We'll put it on pay-per-view. Knees fail for the low price.
Yeah.
That's how we get paid for the podcast.
There you go.
You got to surrender your knees. It's okay.
There you go. Yeah, you know what? My knees and my shoulder were surrendered a long time ago. I don't think this boy's days of jump serving hitting a spike at 60, 65 miles an hour. I think those days are long over. The 41-inch vertical leap is no longer there. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Hopefully I could show it like in little small bursts. And like I said, it's a rec league. So I'm pretty much just going to stay out of the way and make a play on the ball when it comes to me, because I'm no longer that guy.
Hey, as long as you're being active physically, and you're staying healthy, and you're also finding some enjoyment in playing a game that you loved for so long, then I think that's a super positive thing. One of my friends who lives in Atlanta now, Connor Knotts, Connor used to say it all the time. Like everywhere he moved over the years, it was the first thing was, I got to find a soccer league. I got to find a men's soccer league, because it's a sport he played throughout college, the sport he loved, and it was a way for him to stay in shape, interact with people his age, meet new people, that type of thing. So, yeah, even at our age, well, your age and my age, we're not the same age. I don't know. I said it like that.
Thanks, Brendan.
You're welcome, Bob. It's super important to find ways to still be active and, physically and active in the community as well. No, that's all super positive, super good things to hear.
Oh, good. And how are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay. There's life stresses just like anything else, but nothing that is anything that is within my control. So to take my mom's advice over the years, control what you can control. And things that I can't control, you just let it ride off your back and figure it out
as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing well. This weekend's gonna be fun. Hanging out with the wife and dog sitting. So we're gonna have a good time. So I'm doing well. Doing okay. Thank you.
Good. And hopefully, all you viewers that are joining us tonight, hopefully you're all doing well. And you know what? Maybe reach out to somebody that you haven't heard from or haven't spoken to in a few months or a year or two that's still on your phone. Hey, thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. Sometimes that sparks up a conversation. Sometimes it doesn't. But unless you're reaching out to an enemy, I can almost promise you it'll bring a grin to their face. And who knows? It'll maybe make you feel a little bit better too.
Absolutely. Good advice. Well, guys, Bob is still cranking out articles left and right, while I am sitting and twiddling my thumbs and waiting for fantasy football season to come around. This is the worst part of the year for me as a journalist doing fantasy football. Like, what do I do? It's the Ricky Bobby. Like, what do I do with my hands? Like, I don't know. Like, there's only so much I can do. But Bob, for all the people that don't already follow you and your work, whether it be with Athlon or now Saints Wire, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you and all of your work?
I keep expanding my boundaries on where I could be found. My primary work going forward is going to be with John Sigler. I'm working for John Sigler at Saints Wire, or if you're over on X, at the Saints Wire. But I'm still doing pieces for Athlon. This time of year we're doing, and Brendan, I know you've done this too. So we like to call them fun pieces, but in reality, they're a lot of work because you're committed to a daily piece of over on the Saints Wire. We're calling it the Saints Player of the Day. On Athlon, I'm calling it the Saints Jersey History Countdown. But we're doing a countdown from 99 all the way down to 0. So that's one piece each day on each site. In addition to the PFF rankings I've been doing and the player spotlights that I've been doing, so it's a lot of work. But whether you follow us over on Saints Wire or at Athlon Sports, I do post all of my personal articles on my social media, which is Bob Rose on Facebook, at BobbyR2613 over on Twitter, and I'm involved with several Facebook groups. But obviously, our baby, Brendan and mine's, is the Bayou Blitz group. That's where we like to streamline all of our things first, including our shows, our articles, get checked or check out announcements. So stay tuned for those too. So if you're already a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, thank you and love you for it. If you're not, just find Bayou Blitz on Facebook. It's honestly that easy. Send an invite request. Unless you have some kind of goofy, freaky, weird profile, you're going to be accepted. Get friends, get family members, get other Saints fans over there too. We're trying to beef up those numbers over there. And again, thank you to the people, to Shireen DeWalt especially, but everybody over at Get Checked or Check Out. Remember that this June is Cataract Awareness Month. So if you're a little bit behind, make that eye doctor's appointment. Get checked out. That includes a glaucoma test, your eye exam, and just whatever the eye doctor needs to do, in addition to whatever else other health related ailments that you need to get taken care of.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. I've expanded to TikTok recently, so if you guys are on the TikTok, you guys can follow me at BT Boylan. Make sure you follow me for some of the film stuff. I say this about this time every year, but Thomas continues to send me submissions that need to be watched and analyzed and giving feedback on. So make sure you tune in for some of this film festival season stuff that we are in. You can follow the Bayou Blitz over on the X Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod. I was thinking about making a joke. I better not make a joke with the state of X Twitter right now and some other things. So
thank you again to Courtney Roby for joining us. Tennessee Titans rookie card, autograph photo that we got on the cruise this year, and my shoulder's killing me, so I didn't know if I could whirl all the way around, but my custom number 15 Bayou Blitz jersey too. So I came did I whirl all the way around to everybody so everybody could see it?
Yeah, you did. You did
Okay.
enough. You did enough.
All right.
I know.
All right.
You're writing the old jokes for yourself right now, but I'll stop. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, I mean, I talk about Get Checked or Check Out. If there's a chiropractor out there in Western Pennsylvania area that's tuning in, I live in the Moon area. If you make house calls, that would be great. But I have a car too, so I can come to you. So whatever, send me a DM.
That's great. That's great. I need to come up there sometime soon. I need for a couple reasons, but I'll definitely be up in the area sometime soon. I'm not saying I'll pop your back, because if I do, I don't know. I don't know how good or bad that's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know if amateur chiropractor is the way for me to go right now, but
you'll take what you can get.
I would, yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for a special Friday edition of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Bob and I will be back for our regular scheduled time on Wednesday. So until then, I hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and find Bob a chiropractor. Until next week, we'll see you then.
Good night.
So, you think you're untouchable?
Word life. This is basic thugonomics. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me. Word life. This is basic thugonomics. Word life.